Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Time for the Monday show with me, Andrew Musgrove, and Aaron Stokes. The season has finally finished, and doesn't it seem like it lasted a lifetime? We've had Champions League nights, cup runs, injuries, suspensions, goals, and much more. In this week's episode, we'll look back on the final game of the season, a 4-2 victory over Brentford at the G-Tech Stadium. And then Aaron and I will get into the season as a whole and bring you 5 summing up questions of the campaign. Plus, Aaron has got the trivia this week. Thanks for joining us. Let's get on with the show. Aaron, you well?
Very well, thank you very much. Good to end the season on a win, wasn't it? And I must admit, going into the final game of the season, I wasn't very confident, having watched the Brighton slip up and the Manchester United defeat. But Newcastle United, what is it about them winning on the final day? What's that now, 8 of the last 10 final days? And I heard a stat in the office this morning, don't know if it's true, but someone from the Newcastle United Supporters Club said every time they've done that boat down the Thames on the final day in London, they've won.
That's quite the sales pitch,
or maybe
isn't
not
it?
won, but they're definitely undefeated.
It did look quite the party.
It did look. I mean, it always does, doesn't it? Especially when the sun's shining down on that May afternoon. But yeah, it looked brilliant. And look, the lads got it done on the pitch as well.
Did you have a good weekend? Because you had a rare Saturday off.
Rare Saturday off. Never seems to happen in this job. But yeah, lovely. I mean, you got the text nice and early, which means that it was a good park run time.
It was, ladies and gents. He actually sent us a time, a screenshot as well of his app. Go on.
Yeah, what was it? 26:49. Good time in the
like he doesn't know.
Close to a PB. And then yeah, had a lovely day. Went down to Oosburn for the afternoon. Sun was shining, quarter tan, and then yeah, Sunday came around and Newcastle won. So
well, I didn't do park run this weekend.
I did notice that.
Yeah, I've pulled my hamstring.
2
weeks in a row. I pulled my hamstring last Monday night playing football, an absolute pile driver, which didn't go in and got blocked by the defender. But as I landed, my hamstring popped. So
I'm just hearing excuses.
No, I've got the Blading race, you see, on the 9th of June. And,
so you need to be training?
Yeah, but I don't want to risk it. So I'm going to have the next couple of weeks off, and hopefully my fitness, which is just ingrained in me anyway, pulls me through. But yeah, I went to a wedding on Saturday in the sunshine, so they picked a nice day for it. It's wedding season, isn't it? So
it is, yeah.
Lovely weekend had. And then I have to say I was nervous for this Brentford game. I did say on the match preview I was very, very nervous because Newcastle's away form. The performance against Manchester United I felt was lacking a bit of conviction. Yes, to create the chances, but just in general, I was fearing the worst against Brentford. But we didn't need to. But before we get on to that, I want to start with something, just a really nice touching moment away from the football. You might have seen over the weekend that Anthony Gordon visited a young Newcastle United fan in hospital down in the northwest. And I said last week, after that defeat to Manchester United and the way that Anthony Gordon conducted himself in the post-match interview with decorum and calmness about the penalty that was not, to me, it showed a future Newcastle United captain. And then you see act of kindness like this. Gordon, he could have just sent a video. He could have popped a signed shirt in the post, but he went out of his way to visit the little lad called Joseph. And I think it just reaffirms his character. And I honestly do believe that when Jamal Lascelles and Kieran Trippier go, for me, Anthony Gordon has to be captain.
I think there'll be a lot of people who are subscribing to that, definitely. And what I like most about the obviously what you've just described is how there was no media team following down there. There was no personal Instagram post from himself doing it. It was just apparently he got the call on social media from the family and just headed straight down.
He got in touch
straight down the M62, and he was there a couple hours later. And what a nice character he is. I mean, I saw a very, very, very good video of him at the food bank a couple of weeks ago as well. He just seems like such a genuine, down to earth bloke. Yeah,
fantastic to see. We wish Joseph and all the other little uns in that cancer ward fighting the horrible disease. We wish you all the best. Let's get on to Brentford then. Goals from Harvey Barnes, Jacob Murphy, Alexander Isak and Bruno Guimaraes. 3-0 by half-time. But it's fair to say that the first 10 minutes was just kind of the same old Newcastle United on the road. Slow starting and leaving you a little bit worried for what was to come.
Yeah, well, I'd sort of tongue-in-cheek text me, mate, that 1-0 Tony was in coming in about 2 minutes into the game. Ivan Toney had broken his goal duck and had scored. Thankfully, VAR ruled it out. But as you say, the first sort of 10 minutes of the game was that type of slow start and away performance that we've seen so often, and usually is accompanied by a sort of rollicking from how on the touchline 15-20 minutes into the game. Thankfully, they didn't need it. But certainly in those opening stages, that it was a Brentford team who, by the way, have done very well lately, even though they've got nothing to play for. and you could tell they weren't going to make it easy for Newcastle. And there was that sort of worry early doors that it was going to be one of those afternoons again. But credit to them, because again, like they did at Burnley, as soon as they got that first goal, they kicked on, got their noses in front, and they didn't let Brentford in. Obviously, second half Brentford did form a little fight back, but Newcastle, had the measure of them. And that first half really was absolutely fantastic from Newcastle, and it again just gives you a little bit of frustration. Why didn't we see that at Old Trafford? Why didn't we see that last week against Brighton? But
well, in the 5 questions to come later about this season, we've got one that is, what must they fix? And there's going to be plenty to talk about, and the biggest frustration, and we can talk about that, because I think the Brentford performance, there was a lot of frustrations in the performance, especially the first 10 minutes. But the goals did come, and it started with Harvey Barnes, a superb cross from Bruno, and Barnes headed home. And I feel like this could be the turning point in his Newcastle United career. It could be his Anthony Gordon moment. Gordon got the goal against Chelsea in the last game of last season. And, a player who's had questions asked. Not everyone is on board with him being here, but for me, he's going to be key for Newcastle United going forward. And I think that goal is exactly what he needed going into the summer.
Yeah, I think he needs a run of games, doesn't he? He needs a prolonged period in this team where he can finally find his feet. And, there's definitely differences between him right now and Gordon last season. I mean, Gordon, when he scored at Stamford Bridge, I think that was his first Newcastle United goal. Barnes obviously been slowly integrated into the team the second half of the season after overcoming that really freak injury. But next season, we need to see that run of games. We need to see him consistently playing, staying fit. Touch wood if they're in the Europa Conference League, fighting on 4 fronts. He's going to get a lot of game time. And hopefully he kicks on in the way that we've seen Gordon kick on this season.
Which is a really important morale boost for him, because he'll not be unaware of the criticism and of the questions asked about the price tag and whether he was the right player to be signing in that position. And of course, the criticism of his injury record. I mean, it's just been a freak injury, really, or a freak run of injuries with Harvey Barnes, because if you look at his record before he joined Newcastle, he barely missed any game time for Leicester at all. So I think this goal will silence some of the doubters, and it'll just give him that boost, and hopefully we'll see him working hard throughout the preseason and back, and have the kind of preseason that we saw actually when he first joined Newcastle United, because he came to America having signed from Leicester, and he performed really well, didn't he? So I think that goal really could set him up for what will be a tremendous season next campaign.
Yeah, hopefully, and he's had flashes, hasn't he, since he came into the team, and I don't think we've seen a prolonged period of form from him where every week he's been hitting the ground running. He was obviously fantastic against West Ham, which I'm sure we're going to talk about later in the show. He was obviously very good yesterday, and that's what he does. He's a goal scorer.
He's tended to be good coming off the bench, and I think the turning point has to be where he, as you say, gets a prolonged run in the team, which he'll probably get next season, I think, because unless they go out and sign a right winger to replace Miguel Almiron to rival Jacob Murphy, because I do think Miguel Almiron will leave in the summer. I think Jacob Murphy, will get onto him in a moment, I think he'll be here next season. But I can foresee it being Barnes and Gordon on either flank. So I think we will get to see that prolonged run of games from him. And the times when we have seen that slightly, it's not been as long as we've all wanted, but we have seen him have a little bit of time. He's not been match fit, has he? So what we need to see is that pre-season, working hard, have a good tour of Japan, come back, start the season strongly, avoid any daft injuries. And once he gets that prolonged run of games and he's fit, I think we'll see exactly why Newcastle spent the best part of 40 million on him.
Well, I hope so, because just to flip it the other way, I think next season's a big season for him personally, because as you say, there is a few doubts around him. There's a couple of people starting to say, is he worth the money that they've paid for him? Was it a smart signing? And that's easy to say, isn't it, when he's had such a stop-start and poor debut campaign. But I think if he doesn't hit the ground running next season, or he doesn't, find his feet next season, Anthony Gordon has made that position his own on the left if he wants it. Jacob Murphy, by the way, I'm not saying, Jacob Murphy's going to start ahead of him week in, week out, but Jacob Murphy has drastically improved and really found a nice bit of form at the end of the season. So the pressure's on Barnes a little bit to make sure that he doesn't sort of, fall down the pecking order next season, especially if they bring in an attacker in the right position.
It's going to happen. He's going to be tremendous next season. I've got no doubt about it.
Is this you trying to speak it into existence like we did with Anthony Gordon last season?
Well, I was right, wasn't it? We just got to have faith in these players. They're not signed on a whim. They've done the scouting reports. It's a lot of money. The transfer team know exactly what they're doing, and it's not their fault that he's had a horrible run of injuries. He will be key next season without a shadow of a doubt. And we mentioned Jacob Murphy there. He gets the second goal. He had a really good afternoon again. And every week, especially recently, I've seen a lot of stick from him. People question his end product, that it isn't there. But I must be watching different games, because what I see is a winger getting the ball into the box. And okay, sometimes it might hit the first man, sometimes it's cleared. But his job is to get the ball in the box. And half the time it's because no one's there on the end of it. That's not his fault. If he's supplying the crosses, it's up to the striker to make sure that they're there and putting the ball in the back of the net. For me, he's had a really strong end to the season. And, when it comes to crosses in the box, only Kieran Trippier and Anthony Gordon have got more from the Newcastle United squad this season. Another great afternoon for him. What did you make of his performance against Brentford?
Really good. As I say, he's really, really put in some very good performance in the last couple of weeks. And I thought yesterday was another one. We bang on about it on this podcast a lot, but he's so direct, and that's what we love about him, because when you've got, Miggy on the other end of the scale who dillies and dallies and, doesn't want to put a ball in with his right foot and all this, Murphy's just a complete antidote of that. He loves just getting the ball out of his feet straight in the middle. And I actually think, let's look at a couple of his performances the last couple of weeks. Tottenham at home, playing at right back. Very, very good in that win. Manchester United in midweek, we saw the best of him for Anthony Gordon's goal. Isak plays the ball, doesn't even need a touch. Ball across the box, Gordon finishes. And yesterday we saw a very, very well taken goal. He's in the right place. He's unmarked at the back post. Very, very good positional awareness from him. And he makes no mistake with the finish. He's had a fantastic season. And I think I agree with you. I think he will be here next season. I hope he is next season, because I don't want to do him disservice, but he's a very, very good squad player for when Newcastle United are at the minute. And if he fills in, wherever he fills in, he does a really good job. And I think it's remarkable, really. We always talk about how Eddie Howe's improved players, Joelinton, Almiron last season, Fabian Schär, Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy, who could not get a sniff at times in a Steve Bruce, is well worth his place in this team right now.
I think if Newcastle do get Europa Conference League, which we're hoping on Man City, to beat Manchester United, you keep players like Murphy around to help the squad through that competition, because in an ideal world, Newcastle in the summer will go out and get a striker, a defensive midfielder, and a right winger. I don't think they will get all three.
And the rest.
What about
the centre-backs and the goalkeepers?
The centre-backs, we say, Torsen and Kelly look a shoe in to come and sign on a free, which will help the transfer kitty. And then I think those are the three priorities. I think the right winger is probably third on my list of priorities. So if they do start the season, say, with Harvey Barnes and Jacob Murphy, ideally you'd like another winger. But you're not fearing too much, because I think Murphy just adds that versatility. You know what you're getting from him, always 100%. And Eddie Howe trusts him. He will be crucial, especially in a European campaign. I do think, as I said there, Miguel Almiron, I think, is most a threat. I could see him going in the summer. But actually, I think Jacob Murphy, even if Miggy stays, I think Jacob Murphy would be ahead of him in the pecking order, to be quite frank.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would agree with you. And I think a lot of times this season we've seen them both fit and Murphy actually get the nod. How really, really trusts him, and it's something that he's spoken about publicly on the record before, about how much he really has confidence that Murphy can deliver whenever he's asked of. But yeah, look, yesterday he was absolutely fantastic, and he got a very, very high score in the Chronicle player ratings, and it's no wonder, because he, again, fantastic. It's a shame the season's ended, because he's found a real purple patch at the right time.
Certainly has. And we talked there about the importance of keeping players around for the Europa Conference League, and there's a quote from Eddie Howe doing the rounds about the future of Matt Richie and Paul Dummett.
Both, got it here if you want it.
Go on, you want to read it out? Because they're both out of contract, aren't they? They both don't know what their future holds. I think in an ideal world, again, both of them would be on their way. Tremendous servants for the club, not first team players, or not at least in the start 11. Decent enough squad players, but I think even some of them would argue probably not even squad players, given where they are at the stages of their career. But what did Eddie Howe have to say about their futures?
Yeah, so yesterday he was obviously speaking to reporters at Brentford, and he said the players you're talking about, obviously Dummett and Richie, are just incredible characters. There's a slight doubt over their futures, but we'll go to Australia with them. Both of them obviously are included in that 29-man squad. I think European qualification might potentially have a bearing on what happens with their futures. What I will say about Dummett and Richie is that they've been incredible servants to the football club. I absolutely love their characters and what they have given.
Sounds like they're stopping.
Well, I mean, as you say, I think a lot of people thought Paul Dummett would be moving on, and Matt Richie, for the last couple of seasons, it's looked as if this was going to be the time that he'd go. Newcastle, obviously, in the Conference League, will have to meet these homegrown quotas and all the rest of the UEFA red tape, and these two players will help them towards that. It'll also help them in the early stages of the season where Howe may want to rest players for the Conference League, for the Premier League, and you've got the early rounds of the League Cup and stuff like that. I mean, just looking at the stats this season, Paul Dummett, 8 appearances, 2 of those starts, 6 off the bench. Matt Richie, 1 start, 16 substitute appearances.
Yeah.
So, that just shows you where they are in their
I can see the logic behind it on one hand, but on the other hand, I think some might question whether that stunts the development of someone like Alex Murphy, for example, because you compare Alex Murphy to Paul Dummett nearing the end of his career, Alex Murphy right at the start of it, signed a new deal, very talented player, big hopes for him. If you're having someone like Paul Dummett in that squad who is likely to come on for the last 5-10 minutes if needed ahead of Alex Murphy, then is there not questions about why isn't Alex Murphy ahead of him in that instance?
I think what Howe's talking about there, though, is keeping them because they're going to, they could potentially help with these quotas. We saw it last year with the likes of Gillespie and Dummett staying on again because of what you need in a UEFA squad. Otherwise, you have to start dropping down the numbers of players in that squad. I mean, Newcastle only had 23 players in the Champions League squad because they couldn't fill a 25-man squad because they couldn't meet the quotas. So I understand why Howe's saying it, and I don't think he's saying it because they're going to be there to fill in when needed. I think he's saying it because they're good to have around the group. He clearly loves their character, as he's mentioned 2 or 3 times in that set of quotes. And they have been good servants, and there's no doubt what they offer in the dressing room. I think everyone would agree. I think they're just past the best on the pitch.
So if Newcastle United, heaven forbid, Man City don't beat Man United in the FA Cup and they don't get Europa Conference League, are you saying goodbye to Richie and Dummett?
Look, yeah, I don't think I'm going to make a great argument for him saying I think Matt Ritchie's a brilliant character to have around the football club and the dressing room, and he's clearly well liked, but I think his legs have probably gone for about a season and a half, haven't they?
Yeah, but if they stop, so I go on Paul Dummett first.
And Dummett, look, I think on Dummett, I think it's going to be entirely on his own terms because I think at the age he's at, he's played for Newcastle since he was 9, 10. I think it depends whether he'll want to go and play football elsewhere, and I don't think he really will at this stage in his career. There was obviously offers for him or interest in him from the Championship in January, and he didn't want to go. And I think this may be a case of both of them saying to them, "Look, do you just maybe want to
hang about?"
I think not hang about, but just do you want to? I mean, Matt Ritchie's taking his coaching badges as well as his HGV license. He's a busy man. He's been doing some work with the academy and the youngsters. I could easily see Dummett, maybe going into a coaching role as well if he wants to hang up his boots. But as we say, I think we'll know more this time next week when we know whether Newcastle have made Europe or not.
If they do get Europe, you keeping them?
Yeah, look, I would keep them, and I only say that because I think it will help Newcastle with their squad. I'm not saying because I think they can. I don't really want to be seeing Matt Ritchie playing in a Europa Conference League game, but not to be too harsh on him. But I think Eddie Howe knows keeping them around will probably make life easier for him in the summer.
Graham says Howe has to be ruthless this summer. Too many spaces taken up by either under 23s or new signings. Even threes are better quality. Got to upgrade what we've got. On that, Gary says that's also why they re-sign Mark Gillespie.
Yeah.
He also says in Europe, whether they play or not, we have to have a certain quota of homegrown unless we can't have a 25-man squad. Dummett especially may be needed for that. Not that he would play. Let us know in the comments what you think will happen with the features of the likes of Paul Dummett and Matt Richie. Alexander Isak gets the 3rd goal for Newcastle United, then against Brentford. Superb goal, really great pressure from Murphy to win the ball. Gives it to Bruno, who does the rest. And what I love about the goal is watch Isak's feet, the way he just moves his legs to allow the ball to come straight through to his right and bang it in the corner first time. A wonderful finish from him. And he was much better yesterday against Brentford. You could tell that whatever illness he'd had over the last couple of weeks, he'd shaken off. He was sharper. I mean, the pass for Murphy's goal was absolutely delightful. I watched that on repeat. A great assist from Isak for that. But you could just tell he was back to his best. Another fantastic performance from him.
Yeah, I stupidly made the decision to bench him in my fantasy
asking,
football
weren't you,
team.
on Friday?
Because I thought, he was so out of... He was so off it, wasn't he, the last 2 games? I thought, I'm going to bench him, and I think he would have ended up winning as a league or two if I'd kept him in. But you can tell I'm not bothered about that. But yeah, look, he was much better yesterday, and 25 goals for the season now. What was the stat you told me? 21 30 in the league,
30 in the Premier League, and 25 in 40 in all competitions. The first time since Alan Shearer in 2003 or 4 when Shearer got 28 goals in all competitions.
He's good, isn't he?
He's tremendous.
He's a decent little player, like, isn't he, when he wants to be? Look, he was fantastic yesterday, and I think, as you mentioned there, that assist for the Murphy goal was probably just as good as the goal, and he got taken so far wide by the defender, and first time ball across the box. It was fantastic. You can do it all. You can play across the front line wherever you want, and now it's just about keeping him beyond the summer.
You could just tell in the moment for that goal, because the defender makes a mistake and Isak's onto it, and then he's a win. You can just tell the speed of him is so different to what we saw against Brighton, against Manchester United. And it's another what if, really, because if he'd been fully fit in terms of that illness that he had against Man United and Brighton, I think we could be talking about something entirely different. But it's superb to see him get that assist, superb to see him get the goal. And given the fact that he's had injuries of his own, he's largely had to shoulder the burden of scoring the goals because we haven't been able to rely on Callum Wilson. That really is a superb record. 21 goals in 30 Premier League games. Just how much better can he get?
Look, he looks to me as if he's close to a ceiling, but this is Eddie Howe, and we're talking about, and he always seems to get the best of players. I think we've got to remember that he's actually still very young in the grand scheme of things, and he doesn't look it. Looks like he's been playing the Premier League football for years. But Eddie Howe always said when he joined and he got those 2 groin injuries, just let him settle in, let him grow to this league. I think it's remarkable to think that he scored 6 goals in his last season in La Liga, and now he's just turning into this player who's probably going to go for golden boots for as long as he's in the top flight of England. So look, I don't want to say that he's at a ceiling, but you just think if he's still got a way to go, how good's he going to be next season?
Yeah, he's going to be fantastic next season. I'm just hoping that they manage to sign a striker that can push him in training as well, because obviously plenty of discussion about Callum Wilson, and I've kind of flip-flopped around over the last week because of the illness he's had, and we just can't rely on him, and we've been over this, so we're not going to go into it again. But I think what Alexander Isak needs to continue to be at this level, I think, is a partner essentially, or someone who pushes him in training so he doesn't become complacent.
Yeah, look, I don't know if complacency will be an issue. I mean,
I think it just happens naturally, though. I think when no one's pushing you, you just kind of you get complacent, you get content.
I think he needs a second striker along with him, not to keep him going, but just so that he's not playing week in, week out, because you don't want him to get burnt out. He's still very, very young, and how nicer would it have been to just had someone like Wilson there who could have rotated the season and maybe take the pressure off a little bit when he was carrying knocks, or whether he wasn't fully fit. But I haven't seen any complacency. I don't think there will be. I mean, we were obviously scratching our heads a little bit last weekend when he got brought off against Brighton, not knowing that he was obviously ill. And he looked fuming to come off. He looked really annoyed, even though he wasn't having a very good game. He looked like he wanted to stay on. And we all thought, why has Howe done that? We obviously know now that he was under the weather and he wasn't 100%. But it's that drive, he always wants to stay on the pitch. He always wants to do better. He was very, very annoyed at himself that he had a really poor game in such a crucial game. But I think they definitely need somebody in there to
competition, just to offer competition.
Yeah, exactly,
isn't it?
100%.
And it'd be really interesting because, as I said, I do think the priorities is some of the transfer market, number 6 and a striker. And I would love them to go after someone like Dominic Solanke. I know he just, funny enough, started on the bench against Chelsea, couldn't quite work that one out, and then he missed an absolute sitter at the death. But he is someone who I think could really help push Alexander Isak in terms of that competitiveness. I don't think it's a natural. I mean, I think it is a natural thing that you do get complacent when you haven't got anyone pushing. I don't think it's a choice of Isak to become complacent. I just think it's something that happens. So to have a top-class striker pushing him every day in training would be a massive boost to Newcastle. And Solanke fits that bill.
And it would be a bold move as well, because let's just say he does come in, Solanke, and we've obviously spoken about him on this podcast a lot. He would cost a lot of money, but he would know, and everyone else would know, he's coming in to be a second striker. But Newcastle would essentially, in theory, go into next season having a striker who scored 21 goals in 30, and Dominic Solanke, who I think hit 20 in the
19.
league, 19 in the league, 40 goals between them. So it would be a very, very bold signing. I think a lot of people wouldn't turn their nose up at it. You know, we can talk all day about it as to whether it happens. I think the money probably is too much unless he pushes for a Bournemouth exit. And people might turn their nose up at him, but if I'm completely honest, watching him this season, you know, I don't think he's a flash in the pan. And I've said it a long time. I think we are generally seeing a player who has had enough experience now in the Premier League and also a bit of experience in the Championship. And he's now found his feet in a team that is centered around him as well, which does make it easier for him.
It's interesting that you mentioned there the price tag, because he's probably going to cost you, 50 million, maybe 60 million. But if Newcastle United are going out to get a striker, they're going to have to pay big money.
Well, this is what Eddie Howe keeps saying, and it is the truth, and I know he's probably sick of saying it, but you know, you have to think, yes, people will say cash in on Callum Wilson, but you're only going to get, at this stage of his career, 10 to 15 million from him, if you're lucky, given his injury record. Replacing Wilson and finding a second striker who is better than him, or who's, you know, more consistent, or who can, you know, I mean, Callum Wilson, doesn't matter how many injuries you throw at him, he comes back and he starts scoring goals. So he is going to cost a lot to replace, and I think, you know, I mean, I feel like we talk about this every week, but when you've got priorities of signing 2 centre-backs and you need another goalkeeper because, you know, Dubravka might go and you need to replace Miggy at right midfield, you know, they don't have this endless pit of money. And if you're going out and spending 50, 60 million on Dominic Solanke, you know, you aren't getting a right midfielder, a goalkeeper, a centre-back and a DM. You know, you just aren't getting them all.
I think the striker is more important than most of them that you've listed. They can't go into next season with Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak as the only options. And even if you put your house on QL being something special.
No, hang on. But if you, let's just say Newcastle keep Callum Wilson, do they need to go out and spend 50, 60 million on a striker? Really?
I think so.
I mean, it's the third striker debate all over again, isn't it? But I would argue if Callum Wilson stays put and you've obviously got Isak, then I don't think you really need to go out and spend 50,
I still think, though, even if it's not a first-choice striker like Dominic Solanke, you're still going to end up paying 25, 30 million for a young striker. You know, you look how much Brighton paid for João Pedro from Watford, 30-odd million, was it 35 million? You know, he just really done it in the Championship. So that's where we are in this market. So whether it's an experienced striker with 20 goals to his name in the last season in the Premier League, or it's a striker in the Championship, I still think you're looking at least 25, 30 million. Like if you look at the guy from Blackburn, for instance,
Modric,
who's set the world alight in the Championship. I don't know his contract situation, so I could be saying this and he could be out of contract in some way. But let's say he's not. You know, let's say he's got a couple of years left on a deal. How much is he going to cost you? How much are Blackburn really going to hold out for?
20 mil.
Exactly. So there you go. So that's still a big part of your budget, isn't it?
But also, could you also look and say, well, we're going to get somebody in of Callum Wilson. You know, Callum Wilson, he's maybe 31, 32, but we can get him for 10, 15 million and he's prolific now. I can't think of any players like that off the top of my head. But, you know, I don't think... Look, in an ideal world, I would love Newcastle United to go out and spend 50 million on a second striker this summer, or a third striker, even if that's what you're talking about. But I just think we've got to be realistic. And I think, you know, they need to go out and strengthen their defence. They could potentially be down to Nick Pope and Mark Gillespie this summer, which means a goalkeeper is a massive priority. You can argue they still need a left back. A lot of people will argue they need a right midfielder. You're talking about one on a defensive midfielder. You know, we can't have it all, can we?
No, we have to be realistic.
Manager,
it's not. Steve says we just need Andrew to do a video to justify retaining Dummett and Richie like he did with Lascelles and Kraft. I'm not going to do that because I don't think Newcastle really, in an ideal world, would be retaining them. Whereas Lascelles and Kraft, I can see the logic, and I think I've largely been proved right by that one, right?
Yeah, Kraft's been very good, yeah.
Grand, see, he doesn't often tell us I'm right, but I think I was on that one. We've got Way Man saying that QR's not up to standard. We've got people in the comments talking about Newcastle going after Sesko, but he's going to cost you a canny bit of money. Let us know in the comments if you are watching live just what your priorities are this summer in the transfer market. Now, let's talk about Bruno Guimaraes because he's got the 4th goal, and it was a really important goal at this point because Brentford had pulled 2 back, Janolet and Wissa with the goals. Man United were winning, so they needed that goal. It was a little bit nervous at that moment in time. A tap-in from Bruno, plus 2 assists. Yeah, Barnes and Isak.
Yeah.
He put in nearly a complete performance, didn't he?
Yeah, he's very, very good. Another one who's really found his feet at an important time. 50 appearances for Newcastle United this season in all competitions. Nobody else has played more than him. And you've got a feel for him jetting off to Australia and then potentially the Copa America. It's going to be a very, very long summer for him. But he was fantastic yesterday. I thought, as you say, it was a really complete performance. He started to add goals to his game in the last the last period of the season and assists as well. And I think it's just a reminder of what everybody already knew and everyone's known for years, but keep him.
Well, this is the next question. Anyhow, inevitably was asked about the features of Bruno Guimaraes and Alexander Isak, and he said it's important to keep our best players. It really is. Good players are really difficult to find. They're very difficult to bring into any football club because there's such a high premium for them. Do you think, Aaron, that they'll both be here next season?
Yeah.
How difficult, though, is it going to be for Newcastle United to persuade them that this is the place they need to be?
I don't think it's in terms of persuading them. Look, I think we could all really do with Manchester City beating Manchester United, because some people might be turning their nose up at the Conference League and saying, why go through the Thursday, Sunday rigmarole of it? But, I think for players like that playing in Europe, no matter what competition it is such a biggie. In terms of persuading them, I don't think Alexander Isak would need any persuading. He's the main man here. He's loved. He scored 25 goals. And he was playing Champions League football not too long ago. Bruno, we've banged on about it enough. Where else is he going to get this this sort of adoration from the fans? And I just think on Bruno, and I hope this doesn't come back to bite me, but clubs have obviously got 6 weeks to trigger that release clause for 100 million. Given the state of the market at the minute, I just think who really has that money lying about to sign him? Because you look around the Premier League, and I think nobody's going to want that on their books before June 30th when the PSR accounts reset. You look abroad, will PSG maybe use some of the money that they're inevitably going to save on Mbappe to splash out? Maybe, but it's a big ask to ask someone to do it in the next 6 weeks. And after the 6 weeks, if it doesn't get triggered, Newcastle have obviously got free rein to charge whatever they want. So I'm confident they'll both be here next season. The signs from inside the club are very confident that they're both going to be here next season. But I think naturally, given how well they've both performed this season, it's obvious that the rumours and the speculation are going to rumble on for the next couple of months.
You're not worried about him waving to the crowd?
No.
Eddie Howe wasn't, was he? Just
Eddie Howe wasn't, and a lot of fans on social media weren't as well. I can understand why some people are saying, "Oh, he was waving goodbye," but I think that was just Bruno saying goodbye for the season, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't think that was him saying goodbye. Fingers crossed. Anyway, we've got a lot of questions in the comments about who would we sell. I don't really want to answer the question, to be quite frank, but if we had to sell one of Isak or Bruno, who are we crashing in on?
Bruno.
I'm going to say Bruno as well. Let us know in the comments if you agree with that. Now, there were 2 key changes for Newcastle against Brentford, which arguably I think should have come against Manchester United, but nonetheless, they did come against Brentford. Nick Pope in, Joelinton in from the start as well. Just how important were their appearances?
We'll start with Nick Pope. I mean, he made some fantastic saves early doors. Very, very good save early from, I think it was Tony with his feet when it was 0-0. Made a couple of other really good saves, very commanding in his box. Again, you just think, could you have maybe started at Old Trafford, especially when you look at the 3 goals Manchester United scored? Because, not to be too critical on Martin Dubravka, but I think all of them should have really, could have been saved. Joelinton, I mean, big contender for miss of the season yesterday, the crucial point of the game, but we'll forgive him because after that, he was just absolutely fantastic. That wrecking ball that we've seen and that we've missed for so long. And I know we've done a lot of this, and I know we're looking back and we can't change it, but if he hadn't picked up that injury in the derby, you just got to wonder where Newcastle would be now, because as we've said all season, completely changes the way this team plays. He's so crucial to the way they play and the high intensity press and the hurrying and harassing of opponents. Really, really good yesterday. I thought they were both fantastic. And hopefully they've both came through it unscathed.
And that victory secured Newcastle United's 7th spot. They'll have to wait, as we said, for Man City to beat Man United in the FA Cup for it to be worth European football. So let's dive into the first question of our season summary. Is a 7th place spot progress for Newcastle United?
No.
It's not.
No, but there's a difference between progress and success. And I think if Newcastle qualify for the Europa Conference League with Manchester City winning, I think it's a good season. I think given everything that's thrown at them and Tonali and the injuries and the schedule, I think a European finish, despite what's happened in the Champions League, despite 2 really disappointing cup exits, I think it's success. But I don't think Newcastle are further ahead than they were last season. So I don't think it's progress, no.
I think getting European football is the progress. And obviously, when you look at the league table, you haven't finished 3rd. So it's not progress in the eyes of many. But I think given what they've been through this season, as you've mentioned, the injuries been absolutely unprecedented. I think that protects Howe from any criticism over the finish this season. But look at the league table. Newcastle United were just 9 points off, bettering Aston Villa in 4th. I think it's a case of what may have been. And I think that close proximity of the points tally and how close they actually were to 4th, I think it is progress in many ways. I think it is certainly a good season. I think it does rest on European football. I mean,
sorry to interrupt you, but do you think performance-wise the progress as a team this season?
No,
compared to last season, because I really don't.
No, and there's a lot that he has to get right this summer. And if they start the season, given the fact that they'll probably have a few additions and likely everyone back from injury, then there will be questions asked, because there are 2 or 3 elements of Newcastle United's play, especially away from home, but also very, very on short home as well, that they need to fix. The defence just far too leaky. I get he hasn't had his first choices such as Sven Botman, but still that needs to be fixed. And to be fair, a lot of these issues happened before the major injuries kicked in. But just the midfield is such a big frustration for me, because you watch that first goal that Brentford scored yesterday and the way that Joelinton was allowed to run, and no one tracked him. And that's been the case month on month on month. And he hasn't been able to solve it this season. He has to solve it before we kick off next season, because we cannot go into next season with Newcastle United allowing the same thing to happen time and time again.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, that this is why I say I don't think it's progress, because you had a defence in the midfield last season that was so solid. Yes, the attackers probably got better. And I mean, what is it? I think it's 47 goals between Isak, Gordon and Wilson alone. But defensively and in the midfield, and I know injuries, but I think they have gone backwards in the other departments. And I think that, coupled with where they are on the table and the exits in the cup, I don't think it's progress. But as I say, if Manchester City beat, and it's weird saying this because we still don't know the season's done, but we don't really know if it's a success or not. Because to me, a success or not is qualifying for Europe, and if they don't qualify for Europe, then I don't think the season's been a success.
Do you think if they don't qualify for Europe, Eddie Howe is under pressure at the beginning of next season?
Yeah, I don't think he's under pressure in the summer, even though I think the Saudis will definitely be looking at it and thinking, this isn't how our investment's meant to be going.
But I think it'd be really interesting, and I'm going to say right now, I'm fully backing them to be here for many years to come, to win Newcastle their first cup and to really have Newcastle challenging for the top 4 season on season. But it's really interesting. We mentioned it last week. The chairman, Alan Marnin, when he came to Newcastle in the last season, he said, we want to be number 1. And I'd be really intrigued to see how they look upon this, because part of me thinks they'll be going
7th is number 1.
Yeah, but it's that simple, isn't it? And obviously they'll take into account the injuries and the highs of the Champions League and what might have been, but they've said that on record. He's come out and he said that. So for me, that does put a little bit of pressure on Eddie Howe.
I was just about to say, to go back to your question, I think we've spoke about it off air. Next season, if they have a really bad start with all their players back fit and summer signings, then I think he's under pressure 10, 15 games in if it's not going right.
But I think if he just manages to find the remedy to the 2 major issues, the gap between the midfield and the defence,
Yeah.
and just the defence in general, it's going to help having Nick Pope back, because I think he is a massive, massive difference in that defence. You know, he organises it better, he's commanding, he's better off his line, etc., etc. But they're the two issues, and like I'll go back over it. If we start in the same manner as we finished with those gaps, something's not happened right across the summer. But I'm backing them to fix it.
Yeah, so am I.
I'm backing them to go back to how they were last season. And I think on the terms of progress, I mean, they finished ahead of Manchester United for the first time since 1976-77, which is a huge step, because Newcastle want to be part of that elite for years to come. So to be within that group yet again, but to finish above one of them, at least in the eyes of the national media, sends a huge message. You know, we ain't going anywhere. And you know, the teams around them will be wary of Newcastle. You give Eddie Howe a full strength squad and a few additions, and Newcastle United will be back.
Yeah, and look, let's not take anything away from the season. You know, Newcastle shouldn't really be 7th. You could argue that they should actually be higher. But in reality, you know, I think a lot of other managers would have really struggled with so much thrown at them, and the schedule and the injuries and the suspensions. So, you know, they have had a good season. I don't think it's progress.
Wireman says, yes, he said that, probably thought we would be able to spend more money. The Saudis aren't stupid. They know they have their hands tied. Sean says, I think the owners will back Howe as well. Ghost says, I agree, lads, it does put pressure on Howe, but I still think he gets next season to put the tactical thoughts right. And
100%.
that's the consensus here. I think he's going to get time. I think he's going to get it right as well. And I've got a table here, actually, of the top 8 versus each other. And Newcastle lying 4th in that table, 18 points collected. So I think they've proved they can handle the top teams.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you look at some of the results they got this season. I mean, they beat Chelsea convincingly at home. They beat Manchester United. They beat Arsenal, which some may say cost them the title. Obviously lost to Liverpool, but they shouldn't have lost to Liverpool either at home. No. So, you know, and I mean, that's one of the great things about Eddie Howe. They beat Tottenham home. They beat Villa on the first day. They've beaten a lot of these teams at home. Where they've slipped up this season is Everton at home, Bournemouth at home, Luton at home, Forest at home on Boxing Day, Everton away in December, Bournemouth away in November.
It's the teams that
they should have beaten.
Teams last season that they would have blown away. And that leads us on to the second question, the biggest frustration. And I've got a few big frustrations from this season, but one of them is definitely the points they've chucked away.
Yeah.
And I know
I think that would be my main one, I think.
Yeah. And people will say, look, well, yeah, but, you know, anything can happen in a game. You know, you might not have beaten Tottenham on another day, etc., etc. But you go back to that game against Everton and Paul Dummett deciding he's going to rock bottom whoever it was into the penalty box, and you look at the games against Luton where they should have gone down to Luton and shown a bit of fight. You look at even the Brighton game, for example, when they've drawn 1-1. The Man United game just last week. Worst Man United team in a generation. Go in there and show a bit of fight, and they just lacked it. There's so many results this season that have gone against Newcastle, fine margins, but largely down to Newcastle's own making, really. And again, I look at the table and I just think 9 points would have got you 4th. 9 points. Everton.
Yeah.
There's
well, they give 4 points to Everton, they give 4 points to Bournemouth, they give 4 points to Luton across the season. But they lost to Forest.
The thing is, I'm not looking at Forest because they were blown out the water against that. So I don't include that in the frustration because they deserve to lose that game. But Everton shouldn't be dropping points.
Liverpool start the season. They shouldn't have lost when Darwin Núñez scored the double. I think a lot of people will say injuries to this question, but for me, I would agree. I think, especially when you look at the table, when you look how close it is, and we could really be sat here talking about how Newcastle are definitely going to be playing European football next season, whether it's Europa or Conference League, because even in the last week alone, you know, they should really have got something at Manchester United. They conceded 3 really poor goals and didn't take their chances. And that Brighton game will really haunt them because, you know, as we said last week, it was a Brighton with nothing to play for. And on another day, you know, they really should have won. So I think that would be my biggest frustration is as we said, the points that they throw away, especially when you look at how close they would have gotten to Chelsea and Tottenham otherwise. And even Villa maybe,
We've got Ghost adding, he hopes Eddie Howe brings back the S-Housery next season, which has certainly been lacking. Paul says with players we have coming back and a few additions, I think will be a force, to be honest. And I agree with you. I really do. Why I'm analysts, Liverpool at home, Everton, at home. Luton, Forest, there's your 10 points just in 4 games alone, he says. Sean points out Kieran Trippier making a few mistakes as well. I just want to quickly ask you about Kieran Trippier. He is part of that squad that goes to Australia, and we'll talk just briefly about the squad as well, because there's a few surprises in it. I think it probably shows you to a degree how serious it's been taken, and it is probably more about off the field than on the field. But Kieran Trippier not starting in the final game of the season against Brentford, is that Eddie Howe just saying that you're not ready to start games? Or do we look a little bit more into it and say, is Kieran Trippier nearing the end of his time on Tyneside in terms of being that first choice right back?
Is this you just wanted to bang the drum?
No,
I'm pre-season prediction.
I think that the time has come where there will be a serious conversation had about Kieran Trippier.
Look, I think even he'll admit, and he probably has, that he hasn't been, at his best this season. He's obviously had the injury problems. Even before then, he had a really poor period of form around Christmas, and obviously we won't forget the Stamford Bridge slip-up that he did and sort of knocked them out the cup. But look, I wouldn't write Kieran Trippier off just yet. I think, potentially at the Euros this summer could be a big boost for him. If not, hopefully a nice bit of rest for him, which he isn't ironically getting when he goes to Australia this week. But I don't think it's too soon to say that he's lost his place as the number one. I know you'd like to say that so that you can be proved right about Tino, but I think, let's just say Newcastle get European football next season and they've got another 50 games in the schedule. You could easily see Trippier and Livramento both playing 25 of them, because that's just the way Howe needs to rotate. And I think you'd be happy with either of them starting. But I think Trippier needs to find that form that we saw last season, because I think even the fact you asked us that question shows that outside noise and the tide is maybe starting to turn.
First game of the season, second week of August, whenever it is. Both are fit, Kieran Trippier and Tino Livramento. Who are you picking? It's got to be Tino Livramento, hasn't it? The way he's finished the season.
I don't know. I'm not sure. If I would talk, what Kieran Trippier are we talking about?
Well, just Kieran Trippier at the age of 34 being fit.
I don't know. It's a tricky one. I'm not sure.
I'm sitting still with my belief that Tino Livramento will be first choice right back next season. But we will wait and see. Just briefly on that squad that's been named, a lot of surprise absentees. I mean, Nick Pope's in there, but if you look at the first team players who are going, you've got Dan Burn, Emil Kraft, Lewis Hall, Kieran Trippier, Paul Dummett in there. Midfield, Ellis Anderson, Bruno Guimaraes, Jacob Murphy, Matt Richie, Almiron Barnes, and Isak and Wilson all included. But interesting, there's a lot of players who've actually been released by Newcastle in this squad, so maybe they're getting one last chance to show themselves before they go to a new club, put themselves in the shop window. But what do you make of the squad? Because there's a lot of first team big names not in this squad.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously, just start with the goalkeepers. No Martin Dubravka. After a run of games that he's had. No Loris Karius, who we obviously expect to depart in the next couple of weeks, so I can understand that. Fabian Schär obviously started yesterday, but he hasn't been included. That's probably with an eye on the Euros, given that he's just been rushed back. He obviously came off yesterday. Sean Longstaff, I'm so glad to see that he's not on the plane because of the sheer amount of games he's played. If anyone deserves a rest, it's him. And I'm sure there's another big one that I'm missing, but maybe not. And also then just to flip it the other way, Harrison Ashby, the forgotten man, comes back in defence, and Garang Kowal. Hopefully, this is what we need. Get him back in Australia in a climate that he knows, in front of fans that he knows. Give him a run out in the first team, and hopefully he has a big summer. And then, as you say, a lot of youngsters: Alex Murphy, Kieran Thompson, Dylan Charlton,
Travis
Hearns, Ellis Stanton, JT Cook, who's just came back from a loan in Scotland, Joe White, Lucas de Ball.
I wonder if some of these youngsters, because Diallo is one of them who's been released, and maybe it's a last chance for them.
Potentially
have a decent week
or a send off.
Yeah, interesting to see them because we expected exclusions, but I didn't expect to see the names of those who've been released included. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out after that. Other big frustrations: Elliot Anderson being injured. Massive frustration for me because it really would have been his time to shine We got to see Lewis Miley shine instead. But I just can't help but think what we would have seen from Elliot Anderson if he'd not been out for, what was it, 3-4 months?
Yeah, it could have been his big breakout season, couldn't it? And you just got to hope that he comes back next season and he's shaking off these back issues. He's another one who could really do with a nice summer of rest. So, yeah, hopefully next season is the one where he really breaks through.
Of course, Sandro Tonali, the big ban as well.
That's got to be up there as well. It's a huge frustration, that, isn't it? But don't think it's as frustrating as Paul Dummett's WWE move at Everton.
Turning point of the season, I've gone for the 3-1 win over Aston Villa. 30th of Jan, Villa Park, because they needed it.
Yeah, but I remember us coming on that podcast and saying, "Oh, this is the turning point," and thinking, I'm sure they went out and I'm sure the next couple of games they dropped points in early Feb.
Yeah, but they actually, when you look at the run that went on after that, they lost just 3 in 12 after that.
Okay.
So,
okay, I get your point. Yeah.
You know, they came
in. It was
in
a big win that as well on the road. Good performance.
Because coming in that game, having picked up just 1 win in 8, losing the 4 beforehand, no January signings either. So it was a massive win against a team no one expected. So for me, that was a really important victory for Newcastle.
Yeah, mine was West Ham 4-3, March. Harvey Barnes, obviously 3-1 down. Harvey Barnes comes off the bench around the same time as Calvin Phillips comes off the bench. Newcastle win 4-3. Big win, not only because of where West Ham were in the table in that battle for Europe, but also in terms of what it did for Newcastle, because I think if they'd lost that game, it's hard to know if they would have picked back up. Obviously, since then, they've only lost to Palace and Manchester United in the league, both away games. So I think that was a big turning point ahead of their late season push for Europe.
Jonathan says, do you think Mincer will get a chance next season?
It looks like he's going to get a chance in pre-season, but it looks like Feyenoord very, very keen on keeping him. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him back in Holland next season.
Where man jokes, the turning point was seeing Pope and Joelinton in the starting lineup.
Better late than never.
Best moment of the season? I've gone for PSG 4-1.
I don't think anybody else is going to say
Dan Burn getting a goal.
Hang on though, can we class a full game as a moment?
Well,
or are we not talking about individual moments?
Go on then. The individual moment is Dan Burn getting a goal in the Champions League against PSG.
Yeah, okay, maybe. I was actually going to say Fabian Schär scoring to make it 4-1.
I'll tell you a little funny story about that goal, right? So what was, at that point it was 3-1?
3-1, yeah.
And I was sitting next to someone at the game and we were talking about improvements to the side, you know, what they might need in the transfer market. And this person was talking to me about Fabian Schär. It says, "Oh, he's always moving forward. He's always shooting into the stands." And then he gets up and leaves, and he goes to do something. And literally 3 minutes later, Fabian Schär absolutely knocks one into the corner. It was a great goal, and it's just a funny little moment. So that chap probably was licking his wounds slightly, but a fantastic night, that wasn't it? Like everything was just perfect about that night.
I don't think anybody. I mean, we can put it to the test now and ask people that are watching live. I don't think anybody is going to say anything else other than PSG at home is the best game, is the best moment. So yeah, I think that was got to be the best one.
So we've been told by David in the USA here that we've no personality and more monotone than a bass guitar. Thank you, David, from the USA for that. Leave that in a nice little review for us as well. To the rest of you watching, I hope we're not as boring as David suggests. But yeah, a tremendous night. The war flag set the tone.
Yeah,
with the great flag display. I'm not mistaken, wasn't chucking it down. I was at the Dortmund. The Dortmund game was where it was proper raining it down. But yeah, the PSG, I mean, just the goals, Dan Burn getting one full circle for him.
And it was the fact that it was the first home Champions League game as well. That was what made it so special as well, because we went into it with so much optimism. And when we were suddenly, it was 3-0 up or whatever it was, you thought.
It's one of the moments where you do turn the person beside you and think,
is this happening?
Me. Yeah. But other great moments, I mean, Dortmund
was brilliant.
The day in Dortmund was absolutely fantastic.
The scenes at the Market Square were good. Even the first away trip to the San Siro to AC Milan was a good experience. I'm trying to think of league games that have came across that. I mean, West Ham at home, and I don't think it'd be the best moment, but I think it was definitely a very special day. Very, very good to see Harvey Barnes get 2 as well.
The first game against Aston Villa, because I listened back to that episode not too long ago. I mean, you were on absolute
talking about winning the
league. Talking about Sandro Tonali being a fantastic midfielder and how key he's going to be this season. I mean, that was a great day.
Yeah.
absolutely thumped one of the it turns out to be one of the best
Yeah,
sides in the
Sunderland. Haven't even
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about the derby.
that was a good day, wasn't it?
That was a good day after full time because you were sat with me before the game. You saw how nervous I was. I was petrified, but
Never in doubt.
never in doubt after the first half, was it? But
I think watching Luke O'Nien getting skinned by Alexander Isak of his own making because he dives into the challenge. Was it Anthony Gordon? Or was that happened twice?
remember.
Probably happened twice because he loves sliding in when he's got no chance of winning the ball. That was quite special. But yeah, lots of fantastic moments. Player of the season for you?
I can't believe I'm saying this because Alexander Isak's got 25 goals, but I think it's got to be Anthony Gordon.
Tremendous.
I think from where he's came last season to where he is now, then yeah, it's got to be Anthony Gordon. And I think it's really hard. Honourable mentions, I think, have got to go to Fabian Schär, Alexander Isak, and I'd even throw in Tino Livramento as well as a wild card. But I think it's got to go to Gordon.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Anthony Gordon for me has probably been player of the season. We said it was going to come, but he's been absolutely tremendous, and I can't wait to see him just get better and better and better. I think not in the discussion for player of the season, but isn't it been wonderful to see Lewis Hall come to his own?
And also how good he's been the last couple of weeks, and not just how good he is, but not how good he is going forward, but how he looks like he's improving week in, week out, with going the other way, going backwards. Such a shame we haven't seen more of him, but look, he's 18, 19. We're going to see a lot of him. That permanent move getting done.
You should probably have a word for Lewis Miley as well. To be thrown into first team action like he has been, unfortunately injured. He probably would have seen quite a few minutes towards the end of this season, despite all the options that he had, was finally getting back. But he looks like a real talent.
Yeah, and it's such a shame that his season was curtailed by injury. But hopefully he's another one like Anderson who can find a little bit more game time next season as well.
Gary says he's going with Gordon as well, but it's close with Isak. Kind of phrase points out Miley's breakthrough, and Wildman talks up Lewis Hall as well. Number one issue to be solved by the end of the summer, start of the season.
Injuries.
Yeah, it's a bit generic, though, isn't it? Like
injuries. They've got to sort it out behind the scenes because they can't have another season next year where they have.
But they've had a lot of freak injuries, haven't they? A lot of
they've had a lot of injuries that haven't been freak though.
Yeah, but the majority. I mean, Dan Burn falling from great height wasn't his fault. It was Joelinton's fault. Joelinton's injury against Sunderland, nothing they could really do about that. Elliot Anderson, nothing they could do about his injury. There's been a lot of absentees which have just been really unlucky injuries.
Yeah, I get that, but I think there's also been just as many, if not more, that have been, really, really worrying. And I think next season, if they want to get back in the Champions League, I mean, this squad on paper would have been good enough to finish top 4 this season. It's just that they haven't had the chance to play them all at the same time. If you want another answer from us because you're not happy with that, then I'll say, let's say the defence, but is that not that generic? Of course, they need to fix the defence. They need to fix the midfield. You can argue they need a 6. I could probably give you 5 or 6, but don't want to be negative at the end of the pod.
We've got.
What's yours?
Mine is fixing the midfield, and that leads us into the final question. We'll again just quickly talk about the priorities in the transfer market. We spoke about a striker, but for me, number 6 is high on that list as well. Someone's joked in the comments. I don't think they were joking. They've mentioned that Calvin Phillips could be the answer. I mean, how did that go down for you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how Tyler Adams did this season. Your dream.
He's been injured. Give him a chance.
Okay.
Go says they need to plug the gap at the back. When he wants to see number 6, Gary wants a right winger. But for me, they've got to go out and try and sign someone just to sit there and absorb the pressure. Because I think Newcastle are really good when they're on the transition and they get the ball, but when the opposition have got the ball and they're breaking through the lines, it's just far too easy.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no question at all. There's no doubt that Newcastle's midfield has been really overrun recently, and they've had this problem for 2 seasons that they can't really deal with teams playing a number 10, and someone dropping in between the lines. And we saw it against Brighton in the first half, didn't we, last week, where Enciso was just roaming in that space. Bruno Fernandes exploited it on Wednesday. But if we're going to have this argument again about priorities, I think Eddie Howe's made it clear they need at least one centre back.
They're going to get that. They're going to get that with Tussin.
But is that not their priority?
Yeah, but
actually,
I don't think it is for me. I think number 6 or a striker is a big priority than a centre back. I think they need a centre
If
back.
you can only sign one position this summer, where would it be?
Oh, that's difficult because
It would have to be a centre back.
no, it wouldn't.
Otherwise, you're going into next season with Fabian Schär, Dan Burn, and Alex Murphy, and Paul Dummett as your only fit
Of course, I
centre-backs.
mean Botman and Lascelles out for a wee while, so I get that. I mean, obviously, if they were fit, then it wouldn't be a priority, probably in Eddie Howe's eyes. But I think the number 6 is absolutely crucial because people listed when I spoke about this the other day, they said, well, with it, you've got Elliot Anderson, Joelinton, Tonali, Bruno, Miley, Willock, Longstaff. So
Richie.
not centre mid. You've got 7 centre midfielders there, but
I feel like we're missing one as well. But I get your point. There's a lot of them.
But not one of them is a traditional number 6. Not one of them is an ankle biter. Bruno can't do that job.
But
Joelinton can't do that job. Tonali won't do that job.
But Bruno's played as a number 6 for the last,
And we're sitting here saying there's an issue with the midfield.
Yeah,
he's brilliant, but he's not. He's not a player who can protect the back four. It's just not in his making. Because if it is,
we're not just spent most of this pod talking about how brilliant he's been yesterday in the season. So
not defensively though.
Yeah, but he's playing the deepest of Newcastle's midfield 3 and performing well. So look,
come on, you can't watch the games and be happy with the way they defend.
No, I get your point. The only reason I'm arguing with you on it is because I don't think it's the priority that you make it.
I think it is because that's where they're at their weakest.
But
the midfield gets consistently bypassed every single game. The only game recent that it hasn't was the Wolves game when they were given the instruction to sit deep and they did it on the edge of the box and they were brilliant. But pretty much every game before and since then, the midfield's been overrun and they cannot, it's just unacceptable.
So
they cannot go into next season in the same manner.
They need number 6 more than they need a third striker.
Unless somehow the instruction can be given to Joelinton or Tonali, which it's not going to happen because it's not their strong point, where they are told just to sit. It's not going to happen because Joelinton is best going back and forth.
But how do you know that it won't be Lewis Miley there next season?
Because he needs to add a bit of bulk to him. He's not ready for that.
Or Bruno next season,
because we've seen this with Bruno. Even if he's given the instruction, it'll work for a few games, and then Bruno will do what Bruno does because he likes to maraud, and that's where he's best at. He's not the number 6. I know Eddie Howe said he doesn't think it's a priority, but
that's the point I was just about to make. Eddie Howe.
They chase Calvin Phillips, so that suggests that they're thinking a little bit differently to me what Eddie Howe was saying. And I'm sorry, I defy anyone to watch the games and think someone like a Chickatiotti type of player, like a João Palhinha kind of player, isn't a priority.
I know it seems like I'm completely against the idea, and I'm not, and I am sort of doing it just because I love seeing you get wound up about it. But I just don't think it's as much of a priority as you.
But Gary makes a good point here. Joelinton and Tonali, he argues that they can all play that role, and Howe prefers a fluid midfield. I think that's the point. Howe does prefer a fluid midfield, but I disagree that them 3 can play that role. They can sit there, but I don't think it's their strong point at all. Go say, sure, Tonali's young enough to be retrained as a number 6.
Surely Lewis Miley's.
Yeah, but he's not ready for that responsibility.
He's played there this season. Looked all right.
They need a traditional. They need a João Palhinha kind of type, and it
cost you a lot of money.
It would
cost you a lot of money in a summer where you need a lot of positions.
To get to the top, you've got to spend.
It's not a priority this summer. I'm sorry, it's not. So it's not priority number 1.
So do you think the players they've got returning, the Sandro Tonali coming back, Joelinton come back at full fitness, do they offer enough to stop the midfield getting overrun?
Yeah, I think so.
I gotta disagree. I don't think they do. I think Joelinton's absolutely keen. He offers a bit of balance, but he's a box to box.
Look, if Eddie Howe wants to go out and sign a CDM or a number 6, whatever, this summer, then I'm not going to turn my nose up at it. But that would require him changing his style of play that he's stuck to ever since he came to Newcastle. And also, I just think, as we touched on, the money that they've got to spend this summer and the positions they need to strengthen, I just don't think it's a priority. You need to go out and get a centre back. You're probably going to need a backup goalkeeper. You need to upgrade on Miggy, and you need a, dare I say it, you need another striker. So,
Wireman says Miley needs to bulk up. To kind of phrase says, "You're looking for a Declan Rice." You're damn right I am. Yes.
Oh yeah, aren't we all? Isn't every team in the Premier League? I mean, you would argue Declan Rice isn't even the traditional 6 anymore, though. He's box to box these days, so who knows?
Jonathan says it worked last season, and for him, a striker is a priority. Where our Manchester midfield is stacked if we bring in the number 6. And I get that argument, but you could see maybe Lewis Miley going out on loan potentially. I think
Really?
because you need that development to keep going. So you have 7 midfielders at the moment. You bring in another, that's 8.
But what if they don't bring in another one?
Well, where's he in the pecking order?
Well, they've had 7 midfielders this season, and he's played
Because of the injuries.
Well,
we
yeah,
can't
but-
have another run of injuries, can we?
All I'm saying is you don't know that he's not going to play just as much next season.
If everyone is fit.
Yeah, but that's a big if, isn't it? You're not going to go a full season with 7 fit midfielders.
We just said no injuries is your...
Well, yeah, so it is. That's what they need to get right.
A lot of people just quickly, Aaron, before we go on to the trivia, asking about Ross Barkley.
Yeah.
You take him?
Of course I would.
Simple as that?
Yeah.
And there's 9
There's number
midfielders.
6.
Go on then. You've got the trivia this week.
I've taken on the mantle for the trivia this week, just as a little end of season treat for you, not having
Thank you.
not having to pick it up. I've tried my best not to mention any of this to give it away so far during the thing, but we've got 6 questions for you. It's a simple guess of who did more this season.
Who did more?
So, question number 1: who scored more goals? This is all in all competitions as well.
Okay.
Who scored more goals for Newcastle United this season? Miguel Almiron or Jacob Murphy?
Oh, do you know what the annoying thing is? When I was talking up Jacob Murphy before, I was meant to look at his stats to tell you how many goals he'd scored because I have a feeling he's going to. I'm going to say Jacob Murphy.
That's wrong.
Oh,
Miguel Almiron 5 goals, Jacob Murphy 3, but Murphy did get 8 assists.
Okay.
So he's had more goal involvement, but he hasn't had more goals.
Look at that. Everyone in the comments saying Murphy.
Yeah, if I'm completely honest, I thought it was Murphy. I'm surprised he scored as little as 3 in all competitions. Next, we move on to assists. Who got more assists in all competitions? Harvey Barnes or Lewis Miley?
No, Lewis Miley got more assists than me and you at Manchester United. I know
That's
that
not a
much.
question.
I know. So he's got 3 or 4 assists, I think. I think Harvey Barnes has got more.
Wrong again.
Oh my goodness.
Harvey
me.
Barnes with 3 in all competitions. Lewis Miley with 4.
So I was right. I got the stat
We
right.
got the stat right. We've got 2 now for this question. Who made more appearances in all competitions?
Okay.
Sean Longstaff or Fabian Schär?
Ooh, that's going to be close. That in all
Very
competitions.
close.
Fabian Schär.
Fabian Schär 47. Sean Longstaff 46.
Oh, hello.
So by 1. I think only Bruno and Gordon played more than that. I think Gordon played 48 or 49 and Bruno played 50 in all competitions. Who also played more in all competitions? Joelinton or Lewis Miley?
Miley.
It's close again, but Joelinton 27, Miley 26. It feels like Miley played more than that, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But he only played 26.
I think maybe because we missed Joelinton the most when he was out,
yeah.
so it seemed to stick in your head.
Yeah, so 27 to 26 for Joelinton there. Joelinton sticking with him. Who got more bookings, him or Sean Longstaff?
I don't know, is the question. I mean, Joelinton likes a good old run of the mouth, doesn't he? But he was missing for quite a while. Sean Longstaff.
Oh, you're having a stinker here.
Oh.
Joelinton
It's gotta be
9
close.
9 in 27 games. Longstaff 8 in 46 games.
Come on, this is a
Joelinton,
flip of a
yeah.
coin, this, really.
Also, on that, can we just praise Bruno because not only did he go 10 games without a booking, he just went the rest of the season without a booking.
I hope it continues.
Also, I haven't got this down as trivia, but he covered more kilometres than any Premier League player this season.
Yes, Danny Murphy.
Yeah.
But he's not an athlete, is he?
Not an
Danny
athlete.
Murphy. No. Sorry, continue.
Next one, second last question, penultimate question. Who played more minutes in all competitions this season? Matt Richie or Paul Dummett?
Oh, because now Paul Dummett started in the. He started twice in the cup.
He did.
Matt Richie has come on though, hasn't he? A few times. He did 16 appearances by sub. You said so. This is going to be really close.
But how many of these were just him coming off in 2 minutes to get that appearance bonus in his contract?
In the opinion of Evan Stokes, there's no evidence of that. So don't sue us, Newcastle United. 9 minutes. Yeah, go on, Paul Dummett. You see, you talked us out of that there.
228 for Matt Richie and 195 for Paul Dummett. And finally, who was included in more matchday squads this season? Mark Gillespie or Ben Parkinson?
Well, Mark Gillespie's often in the stands, isn't he? Ben Parkinson.
Ben Parkinson 14, Mark Gillespie 13.
There we go. Wow, okay. Wow. That's fair enough to the lad. There we go. And that is exactly why, ladies and gents, I am the question maker, the question answer when it comes to the end of the show trivia, because I'm awful at it. But that was a very good piece of trivia. And everyone in the comments absolutely loved that.
They seem to do very well in the comments there. A lot of people getting
actually, but they got involved, which was good. And we hope you've enjoyed the Money Show throughout the season. We will be coming to you every week throughout the summer, because we've got lots of special shows planned, lots of transfer talk, lots of specials like the Start 11 that we did a few months ago, which went down really well. So stick with us throughout the summer. We'll have episodes with Gibbo as well, and Getting the Bin continuing. And we're over in Australia as well. Well, not me now, unfortunately, but Lee Ryder is over there to follow Newcastle United over the next few days. So there'll be content coming, videos and podcasts. So look out for that. But we just want to thank you for keeping with us throughout the season, despite what the guy in the USA is saying there. We have a loyal support, so we do appreciate you guys watching live on YouTube, watching it afterwards, the listening to us on the audio channel. We do love your company, so stick with us throughout the summer. Plenty of great stuff to come. But for now, me and Aaron will see you very soon. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, including content from Australia, and we'll see you guys next week.